more deeply. Okay, so the fourth place. There's 3 little paragraphs about the fourth place, and there's just 3 different takes on the same thing. The first one is traditional I Ching. Surrounded by liars and thieves. Temptation. Do not encourage anything that would harm others. Well, it's hard. They're metaphors, so it's hard to think. But the idea is, gives you image, liars, thief, temptation. Do not encourage anything that would harm others. Well, that's sort of a caution about how to use astrology. For me, it was a caution of how the astrology was my insight, my clue, but to use it properly. There's a lot of people misusing any language or anything. So like this was part of the challenge for me. Still is. The next one is based on the pentan. No, on the hexagram within the hexagram within the hexagram. So gentleness can reach even the most hardened hearts. Water must be shared. One must be moderate about what goes in and what comes out of the mouth. So, okay, going through this, it's a progression. It's just moving through that. But over this time period, this past year, it was a big change. I found that I was diabetic. I had to cut out sugar. I had to cut out fruit juices. I had to adjust what I eat, and I cut down what I eat and moderate around what I eat. And at the same time, I've been continuing with doing my webinars one step at a time, and just giving out one piece at a time and be moderating how much information goes out in each class. So then this last one is, this is based on the pentans, yes. So one looks twice before one steps. One accepts advice without contention. One aligns with others to solve problems. No blame. So the idea of Uranus being able to do things, be different, not be blaming, having, like one, how to use gentleness, one not doing anything that harms others, but working to solve others and finding new ways of doing this. To me, that was astrology. So maybe alongside, it's a subjective thing, interpreting it. But that was the one for this past year. Okay, now this changing into the next year, when the line changes, we get a different picture. And this starts in December, just as I'm finishing this webinar series of several years. Now I'm in the third place, guided by what is right. One moves on. Many difficulties, many dangers. Take the initiative. Do not explain. Try to be discriminating about to be discriminating about nourishment as appropriate. So that's still a dietary thing, but the do not explain. Heck, I've spent three years going through this webinar series explaining. I get a point where it's time for me to shut up and not explain anymore. Okay, now it goes into, in the midst of difficulties and personal inconvenience, one acts dutifully. The problems of others are lessened. The situation will improve. No blame. Again, no blame. It's just the change. So it's a simple little change, but this is the kind of information you get from the I Ching. But those little they seem relevant affirmations to me, things to be alert from. It's on a micromanaging level. It's in these tiny minor degrees, but it still affects the way Uranus works and what Uranus is trying to work through. Okay, now I'm going to go through each of my planets first, and I'm going to go through the student charts. We're going to look at 1, 2, 3 at each of them and try and make comments around it. But we won't be able to do the I Ching as deeply, but we can talk about some things about it. Oh, alas, yeah, okay. So now we're going to go to Neptune. So these are just clips of pictures of Neptune to the Earth. This is a huge planet, one of the huge planets. And Neptune in astrology represents romance and adventure. People say it's confusion, it's guilt, it's sorrow, it's dependency. It's all of those things, but they fall under the branch of romance and adventure. And expectations. We dream, we romance, we have the adventures, and then we have the praise and the glamour, or we have the sorrow and the guilt associated with how it worked out. It takes us beyond our normal limits. What incredible things. But it dissolves the limits, and we tend to lose our stability because of it. Sometimes that's a real blessing. Sometimes it seems like a curse. Like you can do all the work to bring up your kids. You do all the work, all the work, all the work. They finally let them go, and then they get out on their own. They get in trouble, and your belief and your expectations, they don't live up to what you expected. And there's the Neptune-Saturn problem. Neptune is the dream. It'd be a difficult world if we didn't have dreams of going beyond our limits, beyond where we are, but having visions and romances and adventures. Those are needed, and we need to have a sense of that on whatever level we're living at. So again, Neptune, not going to move much, a degree or two across lifetime. So when you look at my Neptune, moves up, slows down, and goes retrograde. So my Neptune only goes a degree and a bit in my lifetime. 90 days, 100 days, that's it. So you look at the chart, whoa, tiny thing, but these things have significance in relative levels. If something's happening in that degree or around that degree, then it becomes even more relevant. And as we know, planets move through those degrees, moon moves through, angles move through these degrees, it still has its effect, its presence. Each degree is like a university degree. There's a whole bunch of experience and light and experience that happens within that degree, and we retain it in our memory, our collective and individual superconscious memory banks. And when planets move through those degrees, it accumulates and gets influenced by that information within that degree that affects us. And we accumulate and add to it across a lifetime too. So we look closer at it. Here's Neptune, here's move back. It looks like it changed 1 degree, moves back, then turns around, comes back. Never comes back to its starting place, just a little bit. So it looks like it will change the 1 Pentan over the red line there. Okay, now, okay, here we're going to our printout, and we got the printout. The first line I've marked in on these sheets when the hexagram, when a hexagram changes, it changes 26 to 25, from hexagram 26 to hexagram 5, and whenever there's shifts of the story, shifts the storyline. So your dreams, your beliefs, your romance, your adventures, and your guilt and your sorrows are tied up to this. What happened here? Oh, okay, so somehow I got caught up with part of one page on the other side of it. So this is, I should be looking at it like that, but it's not showing it like that. Okay, so there was an overlap in the copying of this one. On the left-hand side, the dates on the far left are just from another printout. It's really starting with the October and the bigger letters. So then the inner Pentan went along. Okay, so there, Neptune, my Neptune started in Libra with a Taurus theme with an Aquarius sub-theme. So again, it ends up an Aquarian sub-theme, but it moves along, and it also moved into the hexagram of after completion on the small level when I was very young. But as we go along here, let's just go along. 81, 90, changed. Hexagram 5 was, I'm sorry, just have to, there was, it's an hexagram 5. Taurus, oh, okay, that's the Taurus ones. So, it's interesting. It's in the hexagram. Waiting for nourishment. For the first part of my life, it's been the belief of waiting for nourishment. What's interesting, because during these times, I really haven't worked for other people, and waiting for nourishment, waiting for ideas, having the vision. But I did have visions and experiences through this, but during the 60s particularly, it was my wild oats times until I went to India and then became more mystical. You don't become more mystical, became more aligned to the mystical side of things. Then it changed. It's in the hexagram of influence wooing in Libra. It's a Libra Taurus theme. It changed it when it changes line in the first level. That's a big change. That's a yearly change. Well, it's not more that it can. That's a big change when it changes one line, and that's changing a degree. And when it changes one line, and this second line, that's a changing of 1/6 of a degree, or 20 minutes of a degree. And this finest level is changing every 10 minutes of a degree. So it goes down, and no, 50 minutes of a degree. So it starts being smaller as you go along. But from Taurus, and from 79 on, it was in Gemini. The division was Libra with a Gemini theme. And certainly these were my times of when I was really beginning my teaching. I had a lot of belief and ideas within that, and at the same time, it was just after when that happened, that April of 79 was when I finished, and I actually built the celestial harp, and then I had to learn how to play it and tune it and things. Okay, so I'm just talking around it because it interweaves with my life, and I can see this so clearly. But the actual building of the harp and finishing it, and then performing it and working with it, that was Neptune. It was Neptune, so it got off. It was shown. I had a big performance right away, and then it kind of stayed in my place. I worked on it, and I fixed it. I tuned it, and I spent 5 to 10 years trying to get a decent tuning system for it. So a lot of this whole period was tied in. At the same time, I was teaching. I had some relationships start and ending. Yeah, so Neptune was in that. I already spent that now. Let's see, what are we here? 2010. I want to get to now. Sometimes it'll make an aspect tighter or less tight, but see here in 2033, my Neptune goes retrograde. And then it backs up over all the things I went over first in my life. It starts backing over all the things. And the last part won't go back over all of it, but there is a turning point. Right now, in January, Neptune, this Libra, Gemini, Aries theme, it's in the hexagram called the Marrying Maid, line 4, and by October in 2022, it goes into line 5. I'm not going to read it all, but it's interesting. In Marrying Maiden, I'm not married any longer. I've had 3, and I'm divorced. But at the same time, I still have some relationships too. Some of my exes, and more likely they have a stronger relationship, trying to make a stronger relationship with me. Now, yeah, so as you go through this, you'll find things that relate to. So here we go. When we look at here's Neptune, it backs up to here. So when Neptune was, when Neptune was right at the early stages, it was just after my brother was born. My brother was born, both grandparents and my uncle all died within the same 6 months of my brother being born. So my mother had the baby and lost the support of all her family just in that first year or two of my life.